Hey guys, Gray here with my first Valorant guide, I suppose you could call it. In this video, I'm going to be covering one hero or agent, specifically Sage. We're going to be going over her toolkit first and foremost, all of her abilities, as well as the specific map bind. I'm going to do a series of videos covering Sage on each map in Valorant. This one might be a little lengthier because I'm going to go over her abilities to start, and then we'll talk about the map and how to use her abilities to their fullest on bind specifically. So if this information helps you out, please drop a like below. Drop a comment down below and let me know your experiences with Valorant. I mean, we're only a week into the closed beta. There's a lot of things that I'm still learning and that I don't know, but I've been maining Sage since the launch of the beta, and I feel like I have a pretty good handle on her, and I wanted to talk about some of the more unique and cheesy niche sort of things you can do with her abilities that you may not know or may not realize, especially on specific maps. So again, drop a like below, leave a comment, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button. But let's dive right into it and talk about her toolkit. So the first ability I want to talk about is probably Sage's most iconic ability, and that's the barrier orb. As you can see on the tooltip, it says equip a barrier orb. Pressing fire or left click places a solid wall. Alternate fire will allow you to rotate this wall. This is an incredibly strong ability. It's going to allow you to block off lanes and shut down advances from your enemy. As you can see, by default, it's a horizontal line. And when you press your fire, it's going to raise that wall up out of the ground and completely shut down that lane. You can see it's made up of 4 different little chunks. And if you press the fire button, or your keybind rather, if you press the keybind again, it's going to turn that wall vertically at a 90-degree angle. So you can place it kind of either way depending on where you need it to go. It's also extremely useful for climbing up on things. Sage is one of the only agents in the game that has verticality like this, that lets you get up on top of boxes. It lets you get very unique angles on lanes, and it's very unexpected. You might not think it, but people aren't typically going to be expecting an agent up on top of something on a box. You can also, if you hold your right click, you can rotate the wall and place it exactly how you want it. The only downside to this is that you have to stand still while you're doing it. So again, like I was saying, it's made up of 4 different little chunks, like you can see. Each chunk has its own health bar, I would say. I call it a health bar, and you can kind of chip away at them, but notice how if you shoot one of them, it also damages the blocks that are connected to it. They don't take the same amount, but they'll take a little bit of splash damage, and it makes it so it's a little easier to break down the wall, but they definitely have a significant chunk of health. This is probably Sage's most iconic ability. It's extremely powerful on defense. You can use it to prevent a push from a certain lane. Like I said, you can use it to get up in an advantageous position. That's going to give you a very unique angle on your opponent. But you can also use it on offense when you're pushing up. And again, people are really not expecting it. If you're pushing up, you lay the wall down and you're up on top of it while you're pushing them, it kind of catches a lot of people off guard, and you can get some really easy kills with it. I'll show some gameplay here of me doing it on both, and we're going to dive into it later on in the video in the map breakdown, but I just wanted to talk about this ability a little bit. But let's move on to her next key ability. So the next ability in Sage's toolkit is the slow orb. We'll read the tooltip here. It says equip a slowing orb. Fire to throw a slowing orb forward that detonates upon landing, creating a lingering field that slows players caught inside of it. You can kind of see here when you shoot it out, it hits the ground and sort of expands outward and leaves this sort of frosted area on the ground. You can see how slow players move while you walk through it, and it's important to note that this also affects your allies. It's going to slow down enemies and allies, but it's extremely powerful for preventing a push and covering your flank. Like you can see here, you can kind of shoot it into the bathhouse here. You can cover this whole area inside. It's really good for preventing people from pushing up while you're on defense. And when you're on offense, it really helps to prevent the flanks from the defenders. It takes a little bit of getting used to it. It'll make you feel like you want to use it before you push in, and that's not right, because you're going to slow down your teammates and you're going to make the push more difficult for you guys and give the defenders more of an advantage. You want to use it sort of passively. You want to use it to cover a flank or prevent a push from a certain direction, or if you know someone is, if you're in a 1v1, you can kind of use it to give yourself an advantage. But you don't want to use it to initiate combat for your team. So that's a general rundown of the slow orb. We'll get a little more in depth with it again in the map breakdown, but I just wanted to show some clips and some unique areas I'll show you that you can, there's some lines where you can throw these into enemy spawns very easily. Now, next up on the list, we have one of Sage's most powerful and unique abilities in the entire game. No other agent has access to an ability like this. I'm of course talking about her healing orb. You equip a healing orb, fire with your crosshairs over a damaged ally to activate a heal over time on them. Alternate fire while Sage is damaged to activate a self-heal over time. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but there's some intricacies I want to talk about with the heal so you fully understand how it works. So it seems like it has a very long distance that you can target your allies. You can see I get one across this whole B zone right here onto my allied Phoenix. I can get the heal on him. He still goes down, but you can see the range on it as a good example there. But what I want to explain is that, again, it's a heal over time. So it's not an instantaneous heal. Your allies need to take some time to get the full benefit of the heal. And it will heal you all the way from 1 to 100 health. It's a full heal, which is amazing. I mean, you can save someone from the brink of death. However, it's important to note that if you take damage during the heal, it will stop. So even if you're halfway up and you get shot once, the heal will stop and you will no longer receive the benefit. This is an extremely understated ability. She's the only one with a heal in the entire game so far, minus Phoenix. He has some health self-heals that he can use, but none have the utility of Sage's heal. It's extremely powerful, and mastering it and being ready at any time to use it is going to benefit your team greatly. And finally, we have Sage's ultimate ability, Resurrection. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can cast this on a downed ally, and it's going to bring them back to life. It brings them back to life with full health and all of their weapons. They have to switch back to their primary weapon because they technically drop it when they die. They'll respawn with it, but they need to switch back to it. So make sure your team understands that so they don't think they lost their gun and they only have their pistol to use. They can still use their primary gun. An extremely powerful ultimate. It can completely turn the tides of a round. If you're down or man, you can resurrect. It's usually pretty unexpected by the enemy team, and you can go back in and push them, and they'll think they're safe because they took out the Jet or they took out the Phoenix, and you bring them back and you go in and push and clutch the round, and it's an extremely powerful ultimate to use. It takes a little getting used to. There's a cast time to it, and you need to be careful with how you use it. But if you use the wall, you can kind of block off the lane, res your ally, and or use the slow orb and get a safe resurrection off. So I know that was a little bit lengthy going over all of her abilities, but I wanted to cover them in this video. Like I said, I'm going to do a Sage guide for each of the maps. I won't cover the abilities in the other videos. I wanted to give a breakdown of Sage before we talk about utilizing her to her full potential on each specific map. So now we're going to transition into the part where we talk specifically about Bind and how we can use her abilities to our advantage in specific locations. I have some examples, and I know the creativity of the community in this game is endless, and there's tons of things I haven't either thought of or seen yet, and the skill cap and the skill floor are constantly going up. So I know that I don't have all the answers or all the best plays, but these are some unique locations and places I found for her abilities that helped me out and helped my team out. So we're going to go over it a little bit here. All right, guys, so we're going to start off talking about defending on A. And I want to talk about some of the places where you could place your wall, use your slow orb and your other abilities to, kind of start off the round. The defenders have a little bit of an advantage here at point A. When the round starts, you're going to be blocked off right about here. You're not going to be able to go beyond this point, but you can stand here and sort of prep your wall and sort of get the placement ready like this. And what I've found some success doing is right as the round starts, you can drop your wall right there and block off this point, this lane from the attackers coming up through here. You could also do it the other way and block off this lane here and prevent them from pushing through here. So it's really up to you. It might take a round or two to figure out what the enemy team is going to do. And during those rounds where you're still trying to figure it out, I kind of like to just block off both. Put your wall up here and just don't even have to worry about it. You want to pay attention to see if there's a Jet or an Omen or another agent on the enemy team that has verticality, because they can get right over these walls and they'll just laugh at it. Basically, they'll jump right over and they'll get you. So pay attention to that and make sure you're aware of who you're going up against. But typically I like to drop my wall there and kind of double back over to the bathhouse and toss an orb right there. So you have this lane covered by a wall and the bathhouse covered by your frozen orb. And it's just going to give you information. If they go over your wall, you're going to know, because obviously they're going to be there. They'll probably start shooting at you. And if they're in the bathhouse, you're going to hear them in the slow. It makes a lot of noise. It's a very loud, audible cue, and it's going to give away their position. So it's a good way of locking down this entire zone. One of the best things about Sage is that she has the ability to do that completely on her own. She can block off 2 lanes by herself, and that's very powerful. But depending on your teammates, you might want to play more aggressively, and you can kind of just come up here. You can drop a wall here, get up on these crates, and be ready to take out enemies as they push. This is kind of an unexpected position. Even though you're a little vulnerable, typically people's crosshairs are going to be aimed, coming around the corner. It's going to take them a second to aim up there, especially to your head, and you'll have a faster, easier time getting the headshot on them. So that's another big utility of Sage, is having the verticality. Being able to get up on some of these crates is extremely powerful. You can get up here, watch the bathhouse, watch this lane. It's very nice. This spot in particular is very easy for defenders. It's a bit of a defender's advantage. The attackers have kind of a hard time pushing up through here. Typically, if someone's going to go A, at least with my team, I know we kind of like to fake the B push and then double back to A and kind of catch the team off guard. So be ready for that kind of tactic if you're defending on this side. There's, of course, a lot of different ways you could set up walls and use your orbs. Another trick I want to show you real quick. I got to take this wall out. This is something I found out recently, but if you take your slow orb at the beginning of the round and aim it at that kind of bar up there, see if I can get the angle right, but you shoot it up, hopefully it bounces over. Yeah, it does. And right at the beginning of the round, you can bounce the orb straight right here, and it's going to be extremely unexpected for the attackers. They'll be kind of expecting it more here, but you can land it on them, and they'll probably already be standing in it when it lands. So that's a huge little trick you can use. There's tons of other lines that I'm sure have yet to be discovered. People are experimenting still. The game's, like I said, it's only been in closed beta for a week. So there'll be other tricks like that as time goes on, but that's one I found that's been very useful. So we're going to switch over to B and talk about that point. So here we are over at the B defense point. This one's a little strange for Sage. There's a very long lane on the outside, and that's a little difficult to cover with Sage, except you can use your utilities, and speaking with your teammates, working with them, you can kind of strategize depending on how you want to do this. So it's going to kind of vary depending on who you're playing with and who's helping you defend this point. But if we come over here and look at this long lane, you have some deep sight lines here. The enemies are going to be, if they're coming this way, they come from back there. And they can get behind this fountain and be aiming up this lane very quickly, probably before you have time to get out here and use your abilities. But if you're kind of clever about it, you can get this wall up without having to peek too much. You can get the wall up like that, and that'll block them for the most part. But again, other agents with verticality can get right over it and push you. I have found that it's a safer bet to just sort of bounce the frozen orb down there, and you can kind of freeze that area and prevent them from pushing that way and save your wall for other uses while you're defending B, because your teammates may need to push up through here and go for a flank, and you don't want to block them off by putting the wall right here. So this long lane is a little difficult for Sage to hold on her own. It might be better for something like a Sova or a Cypher to get more information, peek around the corners and things like that. But she absolutely can hold it down on her own. But I want to talk more about this lane in particular, coming up through this room here, and different ways that you can defend it. So at the beginning of the round, you're not going to be able, excuse my jump, but you're not going to be able to get past this point here. At the beginning of the round, you'll be barred off right here. So as soon as the round starts, you can start and bounce an orb right down here, and it's going to block this area. Of course, with a little more practice, you can get it a little more center if you get the bounce just right. But this is extremely helpful because typically if the enemy team is pushing B, they're going to come through this door. And if you already have it, already have an AoE on the ground that's going to slow them down, it's really going to mess with them. They might double back to A seeing that, so be careful, but it definitely can mess with them a lot. Or if you really want to play on the safe side, you could put a wall up, angle it like this. You can make it straight, put it there. And if you want to be a little more aggressive, you can come straight out of the gate, put the wall up, and get on this crate. But that's a little risky. It's going to give them a lot of time to shoot you on the way up to the crate. But if someone's covering you, you absolutely can pull that off. Again, if no one on your team is playing this area and they're going to push up, it might be best to wall off this entire window. This is something I find extremely handy in a lot of different maps that have these sort of windows and peeking areas. A lot of zones have that heaven window up high that gives high sight lines down. You can block those off left and right, and it's extremely useful for your team and a nice thing to do as Sage. Now, they couldn't come through this window even if they tried. Of course, a jet could jump over it and push in, but it would be suicide. So they're typically not going to do that. You can block this off and give yourself an advantage on this longer sight line for your team. So obviously, again, many different ways you can place these walls. These are just some things that I've done that have given me success while I've been defending on this map. Again, you have these crates. You can get up on here and be ready to defend these points. The verticality with Sage should not be understated. I'm still getting the hang of it. Being a little more aggressive with her tends to pay off, actually. It's surprising. She seems like a very controlling, sentinel class. She's a sentinel, so she's good at locking down lanes and blocking stuff off, but you can be very aggressive with her once you get the hang of her abilities and how to use them. So we're going to switch over to offense now and go over what it looks like to attack on this map with Sage. All right, guys. So now we're going to talk about what it looks like to attack on Sage if you're playing on offense. And it's a little bit of a different animal than defending with Sage. She is a sentinel. She's really good at shutting down lanes and preventing pushes. And you have to play her a little bit differently when you're attacking to take full advantage of her abilities. And also you want to be careful to not screw over your team and make it so they can't push up where they're trying to go. So you want to keep those things in mind as you're playing offense with Sage. But starting off again with a point, I'm going to show how I like to push up on this side. If you're coming up this mid lane, typically you may have an ally over here on this lane. You can kind of, depending on if you are or not, I like to get a little cheesy with it, and you can get right up in here and drop this wall and take out some allies. I mean, if you're really aggressive, you can push it that way if you really want. Another way to do it is to just come in here and shut this whole lane down. If you can push up without getting picked, you might be able to shut this down. You got to be careful, though, because if your allies are planning on coming A, you're going to kind of doing this will shut them down and block them from being able to push. So I got to climb over this again real quick. So another good option is to block this area here, because this will prevent heaven, this high window over here, from being able to take out your teammates. So if you can get up real close, I'm just going to take this wall out real quick, guys. Sorry. We'll kind of take this out real quick. If you come up here, if you're pushing up, you can kind of get your wall on the vertical right there, and it'll block heaven, allow your teammates to push through here. Enemies like to sit here while they're defending, but it's still going to make it so you can be a little more aggressive and push through here and take them out. And then you can come through the building, you can go and plant. That's just one way of doing it. Again, that's if you really want to be aggressive with the wall. Remember, you only have one wall, and sometimes it leaves these gaps. I mean, they might still be able to get you. It's going to take some time to get used to how long the wall is and getting used to your placement and getting it perfect every time. I'm still not 100% with it. You could also, if you want to be a little bit more safe, you could come and bounce an orb straight down there, because there might be an enemy down there and they'll be slow and you can kind of pick them off if you're careful. I prefer to use the orb for situations kind of like that. But again, you don't want to prevent your allies from being able to push up. You constantly have to be thinking about this, because a lot of Sage's abilities on offense are kind of a double-edged sword. They'll block a lane, but it also blocks it for your team. So you have to keep that in mind. You could, like I said, you can climb up on the crates. You can get vertical with it if you're pushing this mid lane. Now let's go over here and talk about if you want to push up through bathhouse, what you can do to help out your teammates this way. You're not going to get too much use out of the wall over here, but you can absolutely use the orb. If you're coming up through here and you think someone's around the corner, you can kind of cheese it, bounce it off the wall, and get it right inside that doorway. And it's going to spread out pretty far out there. And if nothing else, it'll make them back up and think twice, and they won't push in. Maybe you can let your allies get a little foothold here, get some angles on the door, and allow you to get a little bit of an advantage before you push in. This is a really tough lane to push because the second you're right here, there could be someone behind this box, up on top, up in heaven, behind here. There's so many angles to take on this door, not to mention they could be anywhere over here. This is a very difficult push. So you want to try and help your allies out as much as possible. It might be best, again, don't forget that you have your heal. Your heal is one of your best, most powerful abilities. Sometimes on the offense, it's best to just be prepared to heal. If someone goes up and presses that and takes some damage, be ready to pop the heal on them immediately and keep the pressure on the enemy team. It's really important to note that Sage has the ability to keep your sort of momentum going with the team by using those heals. And before your teammates even have to ask, you should be ready to use the heal and keep them alive. So we're going to move over to B now and talk about how you can kind of push that. Again, like I said, A is pretty difficult. It has a big defender's advantage. They have a lot of angles, high windows, and things to help them defend this spot. B is a little bit of a different story. So let's head over there and talk about it. Okay, so typically if you're coming to push B, you're going to come at it from one of two angles. You're either going to go on this long B lane, which everyone likes to just call B long. It's a very long sight lines. It's very sniper heavy. You can use the Guardian, and semi-automatic weapons are going to really take you out if you're not prepared on that lane. But more often than not, your team will come through this mid door here. It's a little more tight-knit, and you can really take advantage of some of the abilities in the game to give you advantage if you're fighting in this area. So what I like to do typically, and again, be careful, talk with your teammates about what you want to do, but if you just want to get the angles on this, you could bounce an orb straight into that room and freeze everyone inside. Again, it has a big splash radius, so you're going to cover this whole area if you get the angle wrong, and that's going to make it hard to push up. So you got to be really careful with it. Or you can just be super aggressive, run up, put the wall right here, get up on the crate, and get some kills this way. You can jump in. And I like to use the wall that way on offense. It's really good to be aggressive with it. You don't really need to block lanes so much as you're pushing up. I'm going to talk about other ways you can use the wall after you've planted the bomb if you haven't used it during your push. But I like to use it to be aggressive like that. You can push up through here. Again, you can block the teleporter if the defenders want to come through here. If they find out you're going B, they all went A, they're probably going to take the teleporter. You wall it off and secure this press for your teammates. And when you come through here, you could wall off this door or toss an orb down there and prevent anyone from peeking that. Or over here even. There's a lot of good ways to use the orb on offense to prevent people from peeking lanes for your team and not prevent them from being able to push up. Sorry if I'm ranting a little bit. I want to be very thorough when I talk about these abilities. So we're going to go check out B long and how you can kind of push up that way if you want, if you're coming from the outside or even coming from here. Again, I've had some success coming up here and being very aggressive with the wall. You get up here, there's typically someone here or there. They're not going to expect you. They're going to see the wall and be like, oh, okay, they're just walling it off to block us. And then all of a sudden you come out of the corner and pop a headshot on them. It catches people off guard, but you might not be able to do that consistently. Once you pull it off once or twice, they're going to be sort of weary to your tricks. They might be waiting for you, but it's still a good tactic to take advantage of. You could also, again, see if I can squeeze through here. As you're pushing up, you could bounce the orb off the wall, down into there, and freeze them off and make it so they can't press out here. And if they do, they're going to be slowed. It's a big disadvantage. And again, pushing up, you could bounce the orb in here, use the wall to block this whole lane off. You could get up on top of there. Lots of ways to be very aggressive with Sage. And it seems a little counterintuitive because she's a very controlling class. She's a sentinel. But say you get the bomb plant and you put this down right here. You get the bomb ready to go. You plant it. You can block off this wall right here, toss an orb over there, and you're ready to go. And you're ready. You have most lanes that they're going to come from covered. And if they come through here, hopefully you have an ally. You could even wall these windows off like that. That's extremely helpful. Then they have no way to use this window at all. So these are just some of the things I've come up with playing on bind. Like I said, I know the skill cap in this game is sky high. I know there's a million different ways you can utilize all of the toolkits of all the different agents here, but these are what I've found useful on bind that's helped me secure some of the rounds. I hope I don't get blown up here, but you know, you can really use the abilities in a lot of different ways. I want to know what you guys are finding, and if you find any unique sort of cheesy things. It's been a lot of fun to explore this, and I hope you guys are having as much fun as I am playing Valorant. It's been a blast for me. So I just want to say thank you if you made it through the entire video. I know it's a very lengthy video. I went a little in depth talking about her abilities and going over the map. In the future, the next videos, I'm not going to cover her abilities. We're just going to talk about the maps. They'll be a lot shorter than this one, but I wanted to give a rundown of Sage before I went in depth talking about how to use her on certain maps. So again, thank you for sticking through the whole video. I want your feedback. If you like this type of thing, let me know so I can, you know, change the formula if I need to and give you guys the content that you're looking for on this channel. But I really appreciate your time. Thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe so I can keep you up to date, and you can ring that bell so you get all the latest guides as I release them on the heroes on their specific maps. Thank you for stopping by. Take care.